What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about 3 tips to help you run better routes instantly. So if you guys apply these things to your route running, to your wide receiver game, you are going to be a better route runner as soon as you do this. So the first one is going to be understanding the concept of selling with your hips as a wide receiver. Whenever we're working a move maybe at the top of the route, like a post route, whether it could be a press release or like kind of like a second level release where we have this DB who's like 3 to 4 yards away. What we have to do is close space with him, give him a move to get him to jump to the outside. And this wide receiver is just running a simple seam route, but you're going to see how badly he kind of breaks this DB's ankles, gets separation, and that's what we're going to try to apply. So he closes the space, attacks him, and he throws his hip into this like second level crossover release. So let's talk about that, right, you guys? So fellas, you have to understand that when a disciplined DB is in man-to-man coverage, his eyes are going to be watching our hips, right? He's not supposed to be looking at our head. He's not supposed to be looking at our shoulders. He's not looking at our feet. He's watching our hips. So a lot of times what wide receivers do is that when they get to this point, they close the space, they try to step on this DB's toes, and they know they have to make a move, but their move is almost like a step. They're just stepping with their feet, or maybe they step with their feet and they try to sell the outside fake, but they sell it wrong. They like kind of lean with their head, lean with their shoulders, but their hips don't actually move. So pay attention to what this wide receiver does. So he does a crossover move, which is essentially where you step in the direction you want to go first. So in this case, he steps first with his right foot because he's trying to go to the right. It's very similar to those of you that know what a rocker step is. That's like kind of this like 1-2 we make at the top of the route. So if you're running just a post route, you would step with your inside foot first, fake to the outside, then go post. It's the same concept. It's the same mechanic. So this could help top of the route, off the line, or mid route like this, right? So when you step with that first foot, it's got to be a sudden step. You got to step down, but this is not the foot that sells it. This foot has to step inside of your shoulder frame, and our goal is to push off of that foot. More specifically, push off of the inside arch of that foot. So if you're wearing Nikes, it's like the Nike logo on the inside part of your foot. And when you push off of that foot, you are pushing into the second cut. But when you push, your hip and your entire body has to go with the foot. What I tell my receivers, pretend like your hip is literally like attached to your foot. It's like a magnet. Wherever your foot goes, your hip obviously follows. Are there some hip mobility elements that go into this? Yes. Wide receivers who have very tight hips, who are not the most flexible, have a harder time with this. That's something you obviously need to work on. But that's the mindset, you guys. I always tell my receivers when you go to try to throw a cut, you want to try to stay stacked. You want your hip, your head, and your foot to try. Obviously, you're not going to get to a perfectly stacked position, but that's what you should be thinking with your upper body. Your upper body throws with the foot because when your hip goes, not only is that a more explosive cut because you're pushing off the inside foot, but it sells it better. And you see what that does to the DB. You see how far it gets him to jump, and we could get space. So, guys, if you could apply that with your releases off the line of scrimmage, second level releases, and top of the route, I guarantee you are going to get more separation, especially against more disciplined DBs. Now, the second thing we're going to be discussing has to do with the top of the route. But before we get into that, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you're watching this video and you guys would like an 8-week-long training schedule that you can follow, go to that very first link in the description below for our Elite Wide Receiver Training Package. What you'll get access to, guys, is 2 months of daily wide receiver gym workouts and daily wide receiver field workouts. So we map everything out like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We give you the exact sets and reps for each drill and gym exercise. It's like, hey, in the gym, you're doing this. We give you video examples of each exercise. Then it's like, hey, on the field, you're doing this. And we give you video examples of that as well. So if you guys want a tailored schedule, very, very easy to follow. Again, fellas, go to that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on our Elite Wide Receiver Training Package. Let's get to this next clip. So we're going to be talking about routes where you guys have to drop your hips. So what routes are those? That would be like, like a 5-yard hitch. That would be like a 10 to 12-yard stop, which is essentially like a deeper hitch. That would be a 12 back to 10-yard curl where you're breaking towards the quarterback, or like a 15 back to 12 comeback where you're going towards the sideline, or sometimes an out route, sometimes a dig route. Those are mainly the routes where you drop your hips. Obviously, there are some double moves where you drop your hips, but it's all relative. The routes will always change, but the running, or I guess you should say the break mechanics will always be the same. So this wide receiver is running a stop route, right? So he gets a little move inside, bursts up, puts the brakes on, stops, ball is thrown right on his outside shoulder. So let's talk about it, right? So anytime that you are running a route where you got to drop your hips, whether it's at 5 yards or it's at 12 yards, number one thing that we got to make this DB think we're doing is we're going vertical, right? So how we sell vertical is obviously with our speed. Now, a lot of times there's a lot of information out there, especially those of you that saw those like clips that the NFL posted of Justin Jefferson talking about running routes, and he was saying how like, hey, it's not necessarily about speed, and he's 100% right. It's more about your speed frequency. Now, can you be slow? slow? No. Like, I get a lot of questions from receivers like, hey, what should I do if I'm a slow receiver? Like, you got to work on your speed. Like speed is very, very important at the receiver position. But again, it's not about running like balls to the wall as fast as you could possibly go, because it's hard to change direction when you're doing that. But the frequency needs to stay the same, which means off the line and all, like from right here all the way to his break point, his speed should remain the same. I say like 90 to 95%. You're still running really hard, but you're under control, if that makes sense. Now, the second thing that's going to help you sell vertical is your strides. You don't want to have these long strides off the ball. Then right before you break, you take those like happy feet steps. A lot of receivers do that because they look down and they're worried about yardage. Like, at the end of the day, guys, you don't have to, like, let's say your route's at 12. You don't got to break right at 12. If you're like at 11, 11 and a half, and you end up at 12, that's fine. It just needs to be around that. You need to end up where we need you to end up. Obviously, in this situation, he's trying to get to the sticks, right? It's probably third down. He's probably trying to get to the first. So, like, obviously, you have to cross that. Don't break your route off 2 yards before the first down on third down, obviously. But, like, it doesn't need to be super, like, right on the money right there. We want to get as close as we can, but it doesn't need to be right on the money. So a lot of receivers will take those choppy steps in order to get right to the break point. That doesn't sell vertical. And then obviously your body language sells vertical. So you need like kind of a slight forward lean. I tell my receivers, pretend like you're pulling one of those speed sleds. So if you could do those three things, you could sell vertical. Now that's not the point, right? That's not the point of this. It's going to improve your routes, but you need that first. Now the only way, because any receiver could do that. You could be 9 years old and you could do that. You could be 25 years old and you could do that. But not everybody can change direction while doing that when they have to drop their hips. And that's why it's important that when you're at the break point, you need to be violent with your hips. By violent, I mean when you drop your hips into the break, it's not a sink, it's a drop. Right? It's like, I tell my guys, you guys seen those things in like medieval times? Like, you know, like the guillotines where they're like executing a dude and they have that thing where like the like blade comes down and drops down and cuts the dude's head. I know it's a little graphic. But at the same time, like I tell my guys, pretend your hips are one of those things. Like how fast that thing drops down, the speed that has, that's what you should be focused on, your hips. Your hips should be dropping right into your feet as quickly as you can. If that analogy doesn't work, pretend you're playing musical chairs. When the music stops, what do? You stop as fast as you possibly can, and you were trying to bring your chin directly down to your knee. And if you could do that quickly, pretend there's a string on your chin, somebody's pulling the string down to your knee as fast as you possibly can. That helps us stop. So guys, don't sink your hips. Be explosive with your hips. Now again, are there some elements that prevent receivers from doing that physically? Yes. I think if receivers lack explosiveness, it's going to be hard to do. So doing stuff in the gym that's explosive can help you with that. Box jumps, you know, Olympic lifts like a power clean, a push jerk, like anything explosive in the gym, like training like an athlete. So this is a textbook rep here from this wide receiver, dropping violently into the break and being able to decelerate to increase his separation. Now, this next tip that's going to help you guys is going to help you really more so when you're against press coverage and this DB is in head-up press. So obviously, like you hear me say it all the time on these videos, like I'm kind of a big believer in having a plan off the line of scrimmage, right? So like you walk up to the line of scrimmage, you have a plan based off of how the DB is playing you. Two things we're looking for when it comes to a press release. We're looking for the DB's leverage and then how close or how far he is away from me. So if he's inside leverage, no matter what route that I have to run, whether he's right up on the line, 2 to 3 away, 5 yards away, I have a plan. Vice versa, outside leverage right up on the line, 2 to 3 away, or like off 3 to 4 yards, I have a plan. Now, a lot of times what receivers do is they get so caught up in the plan, they're not able to react. With your releases, guys, like people compare the wide receiver position all the time to playing basketball because it really is that. Like you have to be able to react on the fly and you have to be able to do it fast. So if you're trying to drive to this inside lane here, and let's say this is a defender in basketball and he takes it away, what do? You cross him up and then you take the outside lane, right? Now, again, I'm not a basketball guy. I'm not going to be able to tell you the technique of a crossover in terms of dribbling, but the footwork's very, very similar. So with your releases, you have to be able to set yourself up to be able to react. Specifically when you have a DB playing you like this. When he is in head-up press, where he is literally right in front of your face, he could do one of three things. He could either shade to the inside, sit right where he's at, or shade to the outside. So my release has to like kind of put me in a position to where I have to be able to react off of this DB. And that's why a split release is a release that I feel all receivers should have to help them be able to react. So Justin Jefferson's running like kind of a slant corner route here. This is something you see the Vikings run a lot. Jordan Addison runs it a lot too, especially nowadays. But what he's doing here is he does this split release to react off of the DB. Puts himself in a position to where he could release inside or he could release outside. Because on this slant corner, think of it like a post corner. You could do an inside or an outside release. Like we'd love an inside release because this DB might undercut it and then we got him. We also could do an outside release because when I break to the slant, he's on my inside hip and then I go back to the corner. So I could go either way. So your release has got to set you up for that based on how the DB plays you. So a split release, this inside foot goes out and your back foot goes up. A lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll take this back foot and they go out, and that's going to put you in a really wide position. So when Justin Jefferson does this, you see how both feet make contact with the ground at the exact same time. That's that coming to balance position. Now you see his feet, he's very, very wide. A lot of times people see what NFL wide receivers do and they try to replicate it to a T. Technical wise, like this release is great and you should be doing this release. But he's very, very wide because he has extremely long legs. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen him in person. I was lucky enough to do a camp with him maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Dude's got insanely long legs. So this might be a balanced pace for him. But for most guys, this is probably not where you're going to end up. Your feet are probably going to be like a half a yard closer than his are. Just understand that you don't necessarily need to get this wide because you may not have much power from this specific position. But see, here's the great part about this release. Since both cleats are in the ground, if this DB were to jump to the inside, he could easily just push off of his left foot and release to the outside. This DB stays there, so in his head, he was probably thinking, okay, if I do this split release, I'm going to take this inside release right now, unless he takes it away. So that's what you need to be able to focus on as a receiver off the ball. Can I react with my releases? Can I have a release that will allow me to release inside or release outside? Can I work on those things? There are multiple ways to do it. You guys remember that crossover that we talked about in the beginning of this video. So let's say he wanted to do a crossover and release to the inside. So he would step with his inside foot first, then fake with his outside foot, and then go. But let's say he steps with the inside foot, steps with the outside foot, and the DB jumps back to the inside. What you could do is just take a third step with your inside foot and do almost like a triple step release and release to the outside. So as a receiver, you have to have a plan off the line, but you got to be able to react. And I feel your releases should be putting you in a position in order to react. That's why I love this split release, especially versus a head-up press coverage DB generally on any route that you're running.